The restaurant lights glowed gold, the kind that makes everything look richer than it really is. Lena sat across from her parents, hands trembling under the table. The air smelled like expensive betrayal. Her mother lifted her champagne glass with a smirk. "To Amba," she said, "the true pride of our family." Everyone clapped, everyone but Lena. Her father turned to her, his face calm but cold. "And to you, Lena, we wanted to tell you in person. You're no longer part of the family inheritance." The waiter placed a bill in front of her. $1,400. Her name was on it. Lena froze. Not because of the money, but because in that moment, she realized this dinner wasn't a family celebration. It was an execution dressed in silk and wine. But what her parents didn't know was that Lena wasn't as powerless as they thought. Lena stared at the message from her mother, reading it again and again. "Dress nicely. We're celebrating family tonight." For a moment, her heart jumped with hope. Maybe things were finally changing. Maybe her parents wanted to make peace after all those cold, silent months. But deep down, something didn't feel right. Her mother never texted without a reason, and the word family suddenly felt too heavy. It had been more than a year since they last invited her to anything. Every birthday, every celebration, every gathering, her name was always missing. Amba, her older sister, was always the favorite. She had the perfect smile, the perfect life, and their parents never stopped praising her. Lena, on the other hand, was the quiet one, always in the background, working hard, never seen, never thanked. Still, she couldn't say no. She wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, this dinner was a new start. She opened her closet and chose a simple blue dress. Nothing too fancy, but enough to look presentable. As she looked in the mirror, she whispered to herself, "Maybe they'll finally see me." When she arrived at the restaurant, the place was glowing. Golden lights, soft music, and the sound of laughter filled the air. Her family sat around a large table, dressed like royalty. Amba waved, her diamond bracelet catching the light, and her mother smiled, the kind of smile that looked sweet but never reached her eyes. "Lena, you actually came," her father said, sounding more surprised than happy. She forced a small smile and sat down. The waiter poured her a drink, and she tried to relax, though her stomach felt tight. Everyone seemed in a cheerful mood, talking about Amba's new business deal, her upcoming engagement, and how proud they were. Lena clapped politely, but her heart sank a little each time her name wasn't mentioned. She waited for her turn to speak, for someone to ask about her, but no one did. Then her mother raised her glass and said, "To Amba, the true pride of our family." Everyone cheered. Lena smiled weakly, pretending it didn't hurt, but inside she knew. This wasn't a celebration for family. This was about showing her where she stood. As she sat there, forcing herself to eat, her gut whispered what her heart already knew. She shouldn't have come. This dinner wasn't a welcome. It was a warning. And something told her, the real pain hadn't even started yet. The dinner started with fake smiles and expensive food that Lena could barely taste. Her parents talked loudly, laughing at Amba's jokes and praising her every word. Amba sat beside her fiancé, looking like she owned the world. Lena tried to join the conversation, but every time she spoke, someone cut her off. She sat quietly, pretending to enjoy the night while her heart kept whispering that something wasn't right. After dessert, her mother raised her glass again. "To family success," she said proudly. Everyone repeated it, clinking their glasses. Lena smiled softly, thinking maybe the night would end without any drama. But then, her father cleared his throat and said, "There's something we want to share with you all tonight." Lena looked up, surprised. His tone was serious, almost cold. Amba's fiancé smiled as if he already knew what was coming. "As you all know," her father began, "our family business and properties will soon be transferred for future management. And I'm proud to announce that everything will go to Amba. The house, the company, the estate, all of it." The words hit Lena like ice. She blinked, unsure if she had heard correctly. Her father didn't even pause before adding, "As for Lena, well, we've decided it's best she finds her own path. She's not exactly strong with money or responsibility." Her mother nodded and said lightly, "We love you, dear, but we can't reward weakness. This is for your own good." A small laugh came from Amba's side of the table. "Don't be upset, Lena," she said sweetly. "You can always work for me when I take over the company." Lena's throat tightened. Her face burned with shame. She wanted to speak, but no words came out. Around them, other diners began glancing over. It was public, deliberate, cruel. Her parents didn't care who was listening. They wanted to humiliate her. When the waiter brought the bill, her father pushed it toward her. "You can handle this, right?" he said with a smirk. "Consider it a small lesson in independence." Lena looked down. The total was $1,400, more than half her month's pay. Her hands trembled as she reached for her card. Her parents watched, satisfied, as if they had just taught her something valuable. She paid in silence, holding back tears. As she stood to leave, no one stopped her. Not even her mother looked her way. Outside, the night felt colder than ever. The golden lights of the restaurant glowed behind her, mocking her pain. She walked to her car, numb, realizing that dinner wasn't about family at all. It was a show to remind her that she didn't belong. Lena sat in her car outside the restaurant, her hands gripping the steering wheel so tight her knuckles turned white. Rain tapped against the windows, and before she could stop it, tears began to fall. She didn't even know if she was crying because of anger, pain, or disappointment. Maybe all of it at once. The city lights blurred behind her tears as she whispered to herself, "Why wasn't I ever enough?" She started the car and drove slowly through the wet streets. The same roads that once led her to family dinners, laughter, and memories now felt like strangers. Every red light reminded her of the humiliation she had just faced. Her parents' words kept echoing in her head. Too weak, not responsible, a disappointment. Each one stabbed deeper than the last. She thought about Amba, how she was always the favorite, the golden child. While Amba was partying in Paris, posting pictures with champagne and designer clothes, Lena was back home working endless hours at the family company. She was the one who had built the digital branch that saved their business when sales dropped. She was the one who came up with the online platform that brought in millions. But when the company celebrated its success, her name wasn't even mentioned. Her parents gave all the credit to Amba, saying she inspired the idea. The more she thought about it, the more she realized she had spent her whole life trying to please people who never saw her worth. She had believed that if she worked harder, they'd finally be proud. But now she understood, they never would be. Nothing she did would ever be enough for them. When she reached home, she walked inside without turning on the lights. The silence felt heavier than usual. She looked around the apartment, the walls, the couch, the little plants by the window. And for the first time, she felt completely alone. But somewhere deep inside, there was also a spark, a small, stubborn voice that whispered, "You don't need them to shine." She pulled out a small travel bag and began packing. Just a few clothes, her laptop, and some important papers. She didn't take much because she didn't plan to come back. Then she opened her phone, went to the family group chat, and deleted it. No goodbye message, no explanation. Just gone. Finally, she took a piece of paper and wrote one line in calm handwriting. "If I'm not part of your legacy, I'll create my own." She folded the note, left it on her desk, and walked out into the night, not as their daughter anymore, but as her own beginning. Lena moved into a small apartment above a quiet cafe at the corner of the street. It wasn't fancy, the walls were cracked, and the room smelled faintly of coffee and old paint, but it was hers. After everything that had happened, she wanted nothing more than peace and a fresh start. Her friend Teo, who had always believed in her, lent her a small amount of money to get settled. "It's not much," he said, "but I know you'll make something amazing out of it." With that money, she bought a second-hand laptop and a small desk. She spent hours sitting there, thinking about what she could build. One night, as she sipped cold coffee and scrolled through her old notes, an idea sparked. She remembered how many girls she knew struggled with saving money, planning budgets, and managing their finances, just like she once did. That was when she decided to create an app that could teach young women how to take control of their money. She named it Bloomrise, because she wanted women to bloom and rise, just like she was trying to do. Every day, she woke up early and worked till late. Her meals were simple: noodles, bread, sometimes just tea. But she didn't complain. Her heart was full of determination. She watched tutorials, read online guides, and coded for hours, often forgetting to sleep. The sound of the cafe below became her background music as she built her dream piece by piece. When the app was finally ready, she posted it online with a small caption. "Made by a woman who once had nothing." For women who want to have everything. She didn't expect much. Maybe a few downloads. Maybe a kind comment or two. But within days, messages started flooding in. Students were writing to her, saying how the app helped them save money and plan for their futures. Social media posts began to spread with her app's name tagged in them, Bloomrise. Within a month, it was trending. Bloggers wrote about it, influencers shared it, and people from different countries started using it. One evening, Lena opened her email and saw a message from a well-known investor who wanted to meet her. Then another. And another. She stared at the screen in disbelief, tears filling her eyes. The same girl her parents had called too weak was now being recognized for her strength and brilliance. She smiled softly and whispered, "They cut me off, but they didn't cut off my purpose." From a tiny room above a cafe, Lena had started to bloom, and the world had begun to notice. Months passed, and Lena's life began to change faster than she could have imagined. Her app, Bloomrise, was now helping thousands of young women across the country. Every day, she received messages from girls thanking her for teaching them how to save, invest, and believe in themselves. She had gone from sleeping on a thin mattress to having a small office space and a growing team who believed in her vision. Still, she stayed humble, focused, and grateful. One morning, as she checked her emails, a subject line made her stop breathing for a second. It read, "Congratulations. You've been nominated for the Young Innovator of the Year award." Lena covered her mouth in shock. She read it twice to be sure it was real. The award ceremony was set to take place at one of the most luxurious hotels in the city, the same one her parents often visited for charity galas and business meetings. For a long moment, she just sat there thinking about how far she had come. Months ago, she had left that restaurant in tears, cut off and humiliated. Now she was being celebrated for her hard work, her mind, and her strength. Life had turned around completely, and she had done it on her own. News about the nomination spread quickly online. People shared her story, calling her the girl who built an empire from nothing. Her name was everywhere, on social media, in blogs, even in news headlines. It didn't take long for her parents to find out. When they saw her name trending, panic filled their hearts. Suddenly, the daughter they had rejected was the one everyone was praising. Her mother was the first to call. She left a sweet voice message, pretending nothing had happened. "Oh Lena, we saw your name. We're so proud of you, sweetheart. You've made the family shine." Then came a message from her father. "You've made us proud, Lena. We always knew you'd make it someday." Even Amba sent a text with fake warmth. "Congrats, sis. I knew you had it in you." Lena stared at the messages but didn't reply to any of them. She felt no anger, just calm clarity. They wanted to share her spotlight now that the world admired her, but she wasn't going to let them rewrite the past. Instead, she turned her phone off and focused on what truly mattered, preparing her speech. She wasn't planning to use it for revenge. She wanted it to inspire others who had been rejected and told they weren't enough. That night, she sat at her desk and whispered to herself, "They'll hear me, not as their forgotten daughter, but as the woman who rose without them." The night of the award gala felt like a dream Lena had once been too scared to imagine. She stood in front of her mirror, adjusting the emerald green gown she had rented for the evening. It wasn't designer, but it fit her perfectly, elegant, confident, and strong, just like the woman she had become. For the first time in her life, she looked at herself and smiled without needing anyone's approval. When she arrived at the hotel, flashes of cameras filled the entrance. Reporters called her name, asking for interviews and photos. "Lena Adeyemi, the self-made genius," one of them shouted. She gave a humble smile and posed for a few pictures, her heart pounding, not from nerves, but from pride. This was the same hotel where her parents had once hosted business dinners, the same place she used to wait outside for hours because it wasn't a place for children. Now, she was walking through its doors as an honored guest. Inside, the grand hall glittered with lights and expensive clothes. Celebrities, CEOs, and politicians filled the tables. The air was full of excitement as everyone waited to see who would win the top award. Lena took her seat near the front, surrounded by people she once only saw on television. Her friend Teo, who had stood by her since the beginning, whispered, "You've already won, Lena. No matter what happens tonight." She smiled gratefully. Halfway through the evening, As she sipped her drink and listened to the host, her eyes caught something across the room. Her heart stopped for a second. At a corner table she saw them, her parents and Amba. They were dressed as if they belonged there, but she knew they weren't invited. Her mother sat stiffly, trying to look confident. Her father's eyes darted around nervously. And Amba, as always, smiled like it was all about her. Lena felt a rush of mixed emotions: anger, sadness, disbelief, but mostly peace. They hadn't come out of love. They had come to be seen, to share the spotlight they once denied her. Her mother noticed her gaze and waved awkwardly, pretending everything was fine. Her father gave a tight, fake smile. Lena simply turned away, refusing to let them steal even a moment of her night. As the ceremony went on, names were called, speeches made, laughter shared. Then the host's voice rang through the hall. And the winner of the Young Innovator of the Year award is Lena Adeyemi. For a moment, everything went silent in her world. Then applause burst out. Lena stood, tears glistening in her eyes, and walked to the stage. Cameras flashed, and the audience cheered. Somewhere in the crowd, her parents watched in stunned silence as the daughter they once rejected rose higher than they ever imagined. Lena stood at the edge of the stage, her heart beating fast. The golden lights above were bright, almost blinding, but she could still see the crowd before her. Hundreds of faces watching, waiting for her to speak. She took a deep breath, holding the award in her trembling hands. It felt heavy, not just in weight, but in meaning. Every tear, every insult, every lonely night had led to this moment. She stepped forward and faced the microphone. The hall went quiet. For a few seconds, she just looked around, taking it all in. The same hotel where her parents once dismissed her, now filled with people celebrating her. And somewhere in that crowd, she could see them, her mother, her father, and Amba, sitting frozen, not knowing where to look. Then Lena began to speak. Her voice was calm but strong. "A year ago," she said, "I was told I wasn't worthy of my family's inheritance." A hush fell over the room. That night, I went home feeling broken, forgotten, and small. But tonight, I stand here to say that self-worth isn't something anyone can give or take away. It's something you build for yourself. The audience listened in silence, drawn to her honesty. "Sometimes," she continued, "the people who should believe in you the most are the ones who don't. But that doesn't mean you stop believing in yourself. Because when life pushes you out, it's really pushing you to grow wings." A soft murmur ran through the crowd. Her words felt personal, powerful, real. "I created Bloomrise for girls like me," Lena said. "Girls who were told they're too quiet, too weak, too different to matter. I want them to know, you don't need a family name to build your future. You only need faith, courage, and a dream that refuses to die." She paused for a moment, her eyes glassy but her smile calm. "To anyone out there who's ever been rejected, cut off, or told they'll never make it, let me be your reminder that you can rise from anything. Because sometimes being left out is the best thing that ever happens to you." The hall exploded into applause. People stood, clapping and cheering as tears rolled down faces. Cameras zoomed in on Lena, then on her parents, who sat in stunned silence, realizing the daughter they had called a failure was now a voice of hope for millions. Within hours, her speech went viral online. It was shared across continents, translated into languages, and watched by over 60 million people. They called her the Phoenix Daughter, the girl who rose from ashes and taught the world how to fly. A few days after her viral speech, Lena heard a knock on her apartment door. When she opened it, she froze for a second. Standing there were her parents, but not the proud, elegant people she once knew. They looked tired, smaller somehow, their clothes plain, their faces lined with guilt. There were no luxury cars waiting behind them, no photographers, no signs of wealth or pride. Just two broken people who had finally realized what they had lost. Her mother's eyes were red and watery. "Lena, we were wrong," she whispered. "We should have believed in you. Please come back home. We can fix this." Her father nodded, looking at the floor as if he couldn't bear to meet her eyes. "You're our daughter. We want to make things right." Lena stood silently, her heart heavy but firm. For years, she had dreamed of hearing those words, but not like this. Not when everything they cared about was gone. She had cried for their approval once, begged for their love, worked herself to exhaustion just to make them proud. But now, standing in her own apartment, the one she paid for with her hard work. She finally saw the truth. She looked at them, calm and composed, and said quietly, "You can't fix what you broke just to watch me bleed." Her words hung in the air like cold wind. Her mother covered her mouth, tears spilling down. Her father took a step forward, trying to explain, but Lena shook her head slowly. They started telling her how their company was falling apart. Amba had mismanaged everything. The investors were pulling out, the accounts were frozen, and the media had started exposing their lies. Their empire was crumbling. They begged Lena to help them, to return home and save the family name. Lena listened without a word. The same family that had called her unworthy was now asking for her to rescue them. But there was no anger in her eyes, only peace. She had already cried enough. When her father said, "We're your parents," Lena took a deep breath and replied softly, "You only remembered that when you needed me." Then she turned around and walked back into her apartment, closing the door gently behind her. Her parents stood in the hallway for a long time, hoping she would come back out. But she didn't. For the first time in her life, Lena chose herself, not out of revenge, but out of freedom. Months passed, and Lena focused on her company, Bloomrise. What started as a small tech startup in her bedroom had now become one of the fastest-growing firms in Africa. Investors lined up to work with her, and her ideas changed how small businesses operated across the continent. Her name was everywhere, in magazines, interviews, and global conferences. But one morning, she received a piece of news that made her stop and smile quietly. Her family's company, the same one that had thrown her out and called her unworthy, was on the edge of collapse. Their debts were growing, their investors had pulled out, and Amba's careless decisions had pushed the company to near bankruptcy. The board was desperate for a lifeline. And that lifeline came from an unexpected source, Bloomrise. Lena's team proposed a buyout, offering to acquire a controlling share of her family's firm. It wasn't revenge, it was business. But destiny had a strange way of turning pain into power. A few weeks later, the deal was finalized. Bloomrise officially owned the company that once rejected her. On the day of the merger, Lena arrived at the same building where she had once stood crying years ago, after being told she was not part of the family's inheritance. Now her name was written in bold silver letters on the glass wall outside the boardroom. Lena Adeyemi, CEO. When she walked in, everyone stood up in respect. Her parents were there too, silent, humbled, almost unrecognizable from the proud people they used to be. Her father's hands trembled slightly as he walked toward her. "Lena," he said softly, "I don't know what to say." She smiled kindly, not with arrogance but with peace. "You don't have to say anything," she replied. "Life already did." He lowered his head, his eyes glistening with regret. "We cut you out of the inheritance," he murmured. "And still here you are leading it all." Lena looked at him, her voice calm but strong. "You cut me out of your inheritance," she said gently. "But destiny wrote me into something bigger." There was silence in the room, but it wasn't awkward, it was powerful. Everyone could feel the weight of her words. As the meeting began, Lena took her seat at the head of the table, the same spot her father once occupied. The circle had closed. What was once rejection had turned into redemption. Lena didn't just win back her place, she built an empire from the pain they gave her. At a grand charity event filled with lights and laughter, Lena stood on stage, surrounded by hundreds of young girls. The event was organized by Bloomrise Foundation, her charity that provided scholarships and mentorship to orphaned and abandoned girls. She watched them smile, their faces glowing with hope, and felt a deep sense of peace. She had finally built something far greater than money or revenge. She had built meaning. During the question session, a young journalist raised her hand and asked, "Miss Adeyemi, after everything your family did to you, do you ever regret losing them?" The room went silent. Cameras turned toward Lena, waiting for her answer. She smiled softly, her eyes gentle but filled with wisdom. "I didn't lose them," she said. "I outgrew them. Some roots only hold you back from blooming." The crowd erupted in applause. Her words hit deep. They weren't just about her story, but about everyone who had ever been rejected, underestimated, or unloved by those they called family. Within hours, clips of her response flooded social media. Hashtags like #BloomBeyondPain and #LenaAdeyemi trended across the world. People called her a symbol of strength, proof that rejection isn't the end, it's a redirection. Later that night, Lena stepped outside onto the balcony, away from the noise of the event. The city lights stretched before her, glittering like 1,000 dreams she had once thought were impossible. She closed her eyes, remembering that awful night at the fancy dinner. The humiliation, the betrayal, the way her parents' words had broken her heart. But now, that memory no longer hurt. It only reminded her how far she had come. She looked up at the stars and whispered quietly, "Thank you for the dinner that woke me up." A soft breeze passed over her, as if the universe itself was responding. In that moment, Lena felt free, free from bitterness, free from needing their approval, free from the past that once held her back. Inside, the crowd began chanting her name again, calling her to return to the stage. She took a deep breath, wiped a small tear and smiled. She wasn't just the girl they once rejected. She was the woman who turned pain into purpose. As she walked back into the hall, the lights reflected off her emerald dress, the same color she had worn the night her triumph began. The world now knew her not as the forgotten daughter, but as the girl who bloomed from the roots of rejection.